Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. Welcome back to Financial Freedom for the Lazy Person. The question is, are you lazy enough to want to make work optional? I'm here this week with Dana, the CEO of Hemlane. Thank you, Dana, for making time to hang out with us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this as always, especially the Leering Center here.
I do feel kind of stupid for investing for a decade to reach financial freedom when I could have just opened a daycare with no kids and traveled a lot more than I already have. Are small, mom and pop landlords being squeezed out, or do they need to get smarter? We hear this all the time right now. Small landlords are getting squeezed out. The Trump executive order trying to stop hedge funds from investing because they're taking all of the properties. But I think the answer to are they being hedged out is yes, but not how people think. Like, it's not a conspiracy. It's not a plan. It's not like there's this group of billionaires out there thinking, how do we get rid of small mom and pop landlords? They're not even on the radar of them. It's pressure from a lot of different sources. And we'll cover a couple of those, and we're going to go back and forth a little bit. The first one to cover is operating costs. I was going to share a chart, but technology beats me up. I'm learning this new system I'm on. In 2021 to 2022, most states saw such a drastic increase in homeowner insurance. It was could have been related to the pandemic, the Hawaii fire. Now it could be related to the California fire, the hurricanes, whatever it is. Rates went up so much. Can you just call your tenants and say, hey, my insurance went up $1,000 a year, so your rent is going to go up to cover that, and we need to go up to cover these other expenses we're going to talk about? I wish it worked that way, but not quite so much.
Yeah. I think from that perspective on the operating side, wanted to almost do a topic on this where it's like it's just as hard to manage 10 properties as it is to manage 500. Like, it's the same amount, right? And so I think those operating costs are real. And when you have something like insurance costs going up, or even harder just to get insurance, period. Utilities, if you don't have sub-metering, et cetera, it does make it much more challenging to do everything. And the larger guys will have systems in place for all the rubs and cam reporting or anything that you may potentially not have at the smaller scale. So couldn't agree more on that.
Yeah, the larger investors, the firms, have attorney teams. And the mom and pop, if they're even planning for it, have retained an attorney that is expensive to even talk to. And when it comes to insurance, if it hits all of your properties, that hits with scale. So that hits the mom and pop, that hits the large investor. Where the mom and pop is really impacted is with rising repair costs. Because if you have 10 units and your expenses to repair 1 or 2 units that have a turnover go up, it's significant. If you have 100 units, and you have still 10 or 20% turnover, you have more units that aren't being turned over to handle that increased cost. So if you're not planning reserves, if you're not factoring in setting aside money for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, and this is actually something the lumberjack landlord and I disagree on. When we calculate cash flow, I calculate 15% of gross rents being set aside, and then I have cash flow. He did that in the beginning, but he's large enough now to where all of his issues for the last 10 plus years have been handled through cash flow. So he doesn't calculate his yield on his rentals with setting aside money for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, which is fine. At that size, you can totally do that. It's all, it's like the large landlords, they spread the expenses across their units, and the smaller ones have to feel it one rental at a time. I mean, the other thing that's go ahead.
I also, sorry to interrupt there. I also think it's in depreciation schedules and what they can do with how they think about renovations and rehabs. Because when you're a larger scale landlord, you could even purchase properties that don't cash flow today because of where interest rates are. And you could say, hey, I can still make this from a tax perspective make sense. And as a small guy, a lot of them just don't have the wherewithal to know how to do that or set up the process, which puts them at a huge disadvantage when they're looking at their pro forma saying, should I buy this property or not? And they say, no, it doesn't cash flow, so I can't right now. Whereas the large guy can get much more creative with things.
The larger portfolios tend to have people who really are spreadsheet driven, that aren't directly dealing with their rentals day to day and don't get emotionally connected with their tenants as much. An example is, if you talk to somebody like Cody Davis or Christian with the multifamily strategies, they start using terminology, like their vernacular is so different that even I have to keep up with what the way that they think about it. Whereas the mom and pop is thinking, you mentioned the depreciation schedule. I have this argument with friends all the time. Like, you know how you can argue with a friend where you just disagree about paying off your properties. I released a video earlier this week, and where I retired early because I didn't pay off my rentals. I paid off one, it cost me $1 million. I still have friends like this Joshua Lupo that I've been talking to for years, and you know, real estate investing, very successful. Like, we're talking to each other, and he's like, no, you got to do DSCR loans, better than conventional. So everybody disagrees on these things based on emotion instead of looking at spreadsheets, where if somebody is to pay off a rental, you do not add depreciation. They're all like, oh no, I won't be paying interest. Yeah, but you're going to be paying taxes.
Yeah.
And not just on that property, but on your passive income, because it's not just property specific. So, and that's why in 2026, my goal is to at least add $1 million in debt to my portfolio. That's the minimum goal that I have for this year.
Yeah. I love it. Kind of related to that same point, Dion. It was really interesting. I was talking to a larger investor yesterday. So they own and operate 700 rentals. Okay. They are purchasing in places that small landlords cannot purchase in. So an example is they're like, yeah, we're picking up, Dana, another 300 units in LA. And I said, how can you make the numbers work in LA? And by the way, all the rent control that's going on in LA, why LA? And they said, well, all of our capital is Japanese money. And there is basically a loophole there where you can basically take the money from Japan, these investors, purchase properties, and all of those losses, if you purchase properties that are basically over a certain age, you can basically write it off against your taxable income. And so they kind of pool this money together and then do that. And someone, Dion, like you and me, couldn't do that, right? We don't have all of these different strategies in place to do that. And so that's where they can make the numbers work, and they can go ahead and purchase rental property that you and I may say we wouldn't purchase. We would have a mortgage on them, and then they'd become an alligator because we couldn't make the numbers work. And so I think there's certain things like that where larger investors are able to make the numbers work because of some sort of tax loophole like that, where that one apparently was put into place in Japan so that they could restore and keep old properties, like restored and kept up nicely. But in hindsight, now it's just used as a loophole for real estate investors to invest in apartments in LA, apparently. So another kind of example along the same lines.
Yeah, that's something that definitely happens at a scale that most, when we say small landlords, we actually don't want to get to, right?
Yeah.
An example of that is the lumberjack landlord did a cost segregation study because he had a high income, and his spouse qualified as a real estate professional. So he could make real estate purchases based on, 6-figure tax returns because of this new depreciation schedule they were adding. Whereas smaller portfolios where I didn't have the high income to worry about or qualify as a real estate professional to use it against a high income, haven't used cost segregation as part of the strategy to invest. So even as we scale to just a few hundred, we can start doing things completely different. And the main thing, I think, when people talk about the hedge funds and the bigger portfolios, properties, taking things like in LA where they take 700 property, you have 700, they're buying there because they have strategies to build and renovate and then use right off against their income. The mom and pop landlords aren't buying to renovate. Like they might do the BRRRR strategy in some cases, but a lot of times it's the accidental landlord, the person who wants to sell their house, has too low a rate, says, well, I'll just move into the new one and rent the old one out because I don't want to, I don't want to lose that low interest rate. When we move in, from the hedge funds, and I'll say this before we get off of those, the hedge funds don't have as big an impact as people think. People see charts where they own massive amounts, because there are small areas where they do own a large amount of them, but it's less than 4% of the overall market of single family houses. And a lot of the single family houses that hedge funds own were built to rent. So they're not taking them off the market. Like the ones where you did, that there isn't the homeowners, there isn't this massive amount of homeowners that are out there going to go do a 203K loan, buy a property, rehab it, and then live in it or rent it out. But the hedge funds will put properties back on the market that wouldn't be on the market for people to rent already. So there's a bunch of concern there when that's not what's going to bring house prices down. The next, so the loophole on taxes is something that they can use at scale, but I think it's the loophole on emotions that really benefits the larger investor over the small investor, where we get hedged out. And this is something my brother almost fell into. When you're a smaller investor, you probably, if you're self-managing, you feel more connected to your tenants. You've interacted with them, you've seen their kids, you know their work schedule. If you're house hacking, you live next to them, you see where they shop, you see everything. You're more likely to think and say things like, I didn't want to lose a good tenant, so I didn't raise the rent, versus the large property management company, cold distanced portfolio owner that is like, well, what can we raise this month or this year? What can we get away with that won't cause turnover, that won't break laws? And they just do it. So my brother had properties from 2006 to 2023, same rent, because he purchased all cash, did the rehabs himself. He was like a craftsman. He could, turn a falling down building into a nice rental. And then he would rent it out and he'd be like, yeah, I'm making, he'd put $60,000 into a property, buying it all cash and everything, pay off the HELOC that he used to do it. And then if it made $1,000 a month, he thought that's a better return, because he doesn't calculate returns, but that's more money than he was making anywhere else. So I'd leave that rental alone. And he would never look at the rents again. But in 2023, Washington State started talking rent control. And he's made some videos with me, so he watches some of my content if he's in it.
Yeah.
And he went and did the binder strategy. So he had tenants from 2006 to 2023 where if he wasn't interacting with me and he didn't know the binder strategy and he didn't know you could raise rents without losing tenants, he might have left it, and then rent control kicked in. And then what did we see with property taxes in Washington? They also passed a bill where it went from 1% cap to a 3% cap. So he would have been priced out of his properties, where the large investors, they don't have rentals where it hasn't been raised since 2006. That even in LA, they're doing the maximum allowable rent, either to market cap, what the market will handle, or what the law will allow them to increase. So that's something smaller investors need to be careful with.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. The other thing on the operational side, I also think, is on the maintenance and repairs. Always when I look at someone's P&L and like where most of their expenses go, if you're a small landlord, you could have one thing wipe out your cash flow if you're having an HVAC replacement or whatever it is. And over a smaller portfolio, obviously you'll get those dings within any given year, but also the ability to be like, hey, does that price make sense? Do I have strong contractors out there? Do they know what they're talking about? That's another one where I easily think that small investors can be at a really big disadvantage, because they don't have that larger purchasing power of, hey, we've got multiple rental properties. We can go ahead and negotiate the price here.
Exactly. When you're talking to a contractor, this is the trick that I use. So if the lumberjack landlord goes to a contractor, and Matt has over 150 units and they're doing BRRRRs and rehabs and flips, and he's done pretty much every aspect of real estate investing that I can think of, that contractor knows not only does Matt have other contractors to use, but Matt represents future work from that contractor. So for me, it's been, I only have 8 properties, 18 units. So I'm not a big, like dangling fruit for the contractor in the future. But my YouTube channel, is. And I'm like, oh, if you are investing, in Pierce or Thurston County, let me connect you with my handyman or my contractor. And I got the roofer several jobs, and I get the contractor several jobs. And sometimes it works out great. Sometimes the handyman's life implodes and then I look bad. But I try to do several jobs with somebody before I recommend them. But that also gets you a good job too. So it's your network. So if you're going to local meetups with a bunch of investors and you're working with a handyman or contractor, mention all of the investors that you know that you will be talking to about the work that this contractor does. You might get a better timeline, a better price, or at least better communication. Another aspect that is, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you on that, Dion.
It's very rare for people to do that with me. A thing that's crushing smaller landlords now is financing got harder. And part of it is the interest rates tripling. Large investing firms that were doing syndications are getting crushed by that. But not all of them did new syndications starting in 2021 before rates tripled. But it's that lending criteria got stricter, right? If we do a search, which is the other thing I was going to share, in 2013, the hedge funds were one of the biggest buyers of real estate as far as small multifamily, single family houses went. That 1 year spiked above almost every other because lending had disappeared. Now, and large firms gather money. Mom and pop investors borrow money. There's a huge difference in calling your 10 friends that all have net worth in the deca millions and saying, hey, I need $300,000 from each of you. I've got all these deals that are on discount right now because nobody can borrow money, and you buy it. Zuber sold his 8 properties, went to 80 because he went out and found money. It wasn't all from banks. It was found, and it's what's going to happen now as lending gets stricter. And it's just something like, let's put a 10% interest cap on credit cards. What's going to happen? They're going to lend less money. They're going to reduce their amount of risk. They're going to heighten their requirement. Credit limits will be reduced. Credit cards will be canceled. So when we try to regulate that, it gets stricter. And for someone like me, and this is exactly what happened from 2013 to 2018. Now I just started investing, got that first duplex. You could have 4 conventional loans in your name. That was it. Now you can have 10 now, but it could get to the point where lending gets stricter and they go, yeah, you can't have 10 anymore. You can only have 4. There is a loophole, but that large investing firm is not using conventional loans. They don't have to worry about how strict that gets. They're not using FHA or VA. They don't worry about sellers saying, no, I don't want to take that loan.
Yeah. What do you think, though, also, Dion? I hear a lot of resistance, and with small landlords getting squeezed out, of them saying, hey, part of the reason is I can't get the numbers to work, or the numbers work, but they're not where they were 2 or 3 years ago. I always say you're locked into that 30-year mortgage, right? And so you're locked into it, so it can only improve. It can only get better, because if interest rates go down to 5%, 4%, or mortgage rates, I should say, you could refinance. I don't think they're going to go back to 3%, but they could get better where you could refinance from that perspective.
Well, yeah, they could get better to where they can refinance. The real benefit to rates going down isn't always refinancing. It's how much that jacks up the value of the properties, and the harder it is to buy, the more people rent. The more people don't want to rent, the more demand there is on limited supply. The more demand there is on limited supply, the higher the rents go. So rates coming down would push rents up. Now it's a lag effect. It isn't going to be like within 6 months. It can be within a year or two. But I think one of the challenges is people have really short memories. And in 2021, I went out and I bought a deal off the MLS, or from the MLS. I would say off the MLS, and people think it's off market, but no, it's from the MLS. Over a 10% cash on cash return, 25% down. It was like kindergarten. Needed less than $1,000 of work. And that was stuff that I do, like coated locks, motion sensor lights. There was hardly anything to do because rates were so low and prices were in flux and people were scared. Well, now my next purchase is probably going to be a break-even deal on purpose. I bought 3 deals of my 8 that were first year break even. I wasn't planning on getting a cash on cash return. When I buy a rental property, I would like for there to be cash flow. I don't want negative. I want to cover maintenance and repairs. So I want to be able to set aside money for that. But I want to check off enough boxes, right? My goal is a small multifamily that is as similar to a single family as possible, which means side by side, not over under, fenced yards for pets, washer dryer hookups, good parking. If I can check off all of these boxes and break even, I'm buying 2 properties this year. Other investors are out there. Nope, I've been watching BiggerPockets for 10 years. Everybody can get a 10% return. Some markets are 20. Here in San Diego, if I can get a positive return, I'll buy it. And I'm like, no. In San Diego, I'd probably be looking at negative returns if I checked off all of the other boxes. It's one of the reasons why it's not my market, but I want to check off all those other boxes where people's short memories are. Ever before 2020, did anyone talk about 3% interest rates? Or I'll buy when it gets back to 3% interest rates.
Yeah, I can remember a time that it was down that low. No.
Right. So now everybody thinks when it hits 3 or 4%, I'll jump back in the market. And that may never happen again. And if it does, imagine what's going to happen to prices. The demand surge of people, I missed 2020, I'm not going to miss again. Here's another way that landlords are getting squeezed out, the smaller landlords. And this is a byproduct of Airbnb and Vrbo. Tenants expect hotel concierge service in long-term rentals. The light bulb doesn't work. I need it replaced. The gate squeaks when I open and close it. It needs to be fixed before tomorrow. Like, the expectation of tenants is so high on rentals that the average landlord that has a safety priority, when enough things need done to, what do you call it? Not verify, but to validate, to make it worth sending somebody.
Yeah, warrant
somebody going. Then I'll send a handyman to take care of those non-emergency things, and they'll clump together. Tenants aren't putting up with that. And not because there's other better landlords out there. It's because they can go and stay in an Airbnb or a Vrbo, and that person will respond to messages and bring new towels and make sure the hot tub is working or immediately. That's not the long-term rental game.
Yeah. It's one of those things where the instant notifications or instant responses actually make it where then it's like this concierge service. And we've noticed that as well. And so usually when you have the first tenant come in, they'll get this like laundry list of here's all the things. And it just takes a matter of time of like, okay, yep, that's, potentially just some normal wear and tear on the place. It will be readdressed because it's discretionary. It only takes responding like once or twice on that for them to stop putting in those requests. But I think you're right. Small landlords will immediately want to jump right in there. And then what basically happens is like they set that expectation that they're going to jump into everything.
I'm traveling with decided that this was the best time to make espresso. So
that's okay. I kind of want an espresso with you, Dion, right now.
Nice. So quick question. Are you at home or are you in Kenya?
I'm at home right now.
Okay. Is Kenya like Thailand where you can't go anywhere without mosquito spray?
Yes, if you don't spray around your house. We spray around the house, but you definitely I mean, and you have nets in your bed.
Everywhere,
but I usually spray at like 5 p.m. and then I don't spray during the day. During the day you're fine.
Another aspect of landlords being squeezed out is the age squeeze. A lot of people who were purchasing real estate as rentals in the 80s and 90s are now in their 70s or later. They don't have a younger generation that wants their rentals. They would like the cash. Like my niece and nephew, when they get my brother's 10 paid off rentals, I don't know that they plan to keep them. I think they plan to get rid of them. So we have a lot of people that are older aging out, and as much as it seems like on our channel, we have a lot of people looking to get into real estate because on the one rental at a time community, Coach Carson's community, we're talking to people and interacting with people who are investing in own rentals or reaching financial freedom with it. So our community seems like that's how everybody is. But this video will probably get 2,000 or 3,000 views in the next couple of weeks. But if we came on here and we talked about the real estate crash that was giving people an excuse to not take action and not buy for next year or probably ever, hundreds of thousands of views would happen. That's what happens on the Crash Bro channels. We get way more.
Yeah.
So I think there's the group of people that wouldn't mind owning rentals, but think it's not going to be worth it because the crash is coming or because regulations are too much or because hedge funds are buying them all or whatever excuse they're using. Or they like the dopamine hits of being able to buy crypto by a couple clicks of a button instead of having to hire the appraiser, the inspector, find a lease, meet the tenants, learn the skill set. Like there's a lot more work involved in setting up your real estate portfolio. So I think people will age out, and I don't think we have the replenishment investors that we're going to make the next generation of small mom and pop investors.
Yeah.
So who gets edged out? It's going to be people who are over levered, under reserved, emotion driven, or people who bought based on hype instead of math. And so the recommendation is don't overlever, keep reserves, buy based on boring, right? The 4 words that describe me and my portfolio are boring and not sexy. And that's every property I want is to be boring and not sexy, because it's going to take 5 to 10 years for it to be the thing that completely changes my life. It's what it took to get where I'm at. It's what it's going to take to get me where I'm going. And I hope that everybody, as we get to the questions and all the comments, can understand the power of small real estate and self-managing. One of the things that I really like is being able to travel, and it's because of your company. I can be here. I'm trying to think if I had one communication through the portal, and that was the rat. Yeah, we had your septic system has completely failed. You got to put in a new one. It smells like something died here. That was the message I got.
Oh no!
And it ends up being a rodent from the tenant. It was a rodent on a vent, and my handyman he got 100% tip because he went. It was like $150 to go and see what was wrong, and I gave him 100% tip for dealing with a rodent body. And then I had one other thing, but it wasn't from, because I have 4 properties on the platform, and then the others are slowly transitioning over.
Yeah. But that's great. I think it brings up the network that you mentioned of, you can travel, you can tap into your network, our network, whatever you need from that perspective to essentially be able to travel and still feel like you have somewhat of a passive investment, even though there's a bit more work, but a bit more reward to real estate investing.
That network is the peace of mind that lets you travel. So in growth mode, it's not passive. Real estate investing is life consuming. You have to educate yourself. You have to hunt for deals. You have to stabilize deals. You have to put your systems in place. You have to learn all of these things. It is going to take over your life. Like, so people are like, oh, I want to invest in real estate, so I'm just going to buy a couple. No, for 5 to 10 years, it's life consuming. But to get to the point where I'm in Thailand for 3 months, I've had 2 or 3 issues that I've had to deal with. One was really simple things. I haven't had a turnover or anything like that. But because of Hemlane, I could. Like, that's why I could be here and just goof off and do nothing. And sometimes forget that there's a time difference and text people. Sometimes message them the wrong time for the meeting. But it's really the peace of mind. And when you talk network, it's the investors that you know. I've networked with a lot of people at the local meetups. I've got friends like Alex and Curtis and Josh and Michelle, and they can all call me when they have an issue. Literally just text and go, hey, my tenant said this or did this. What do I do? I could call them and say, hey, my tenant said this. Can you drive by and tell me what you see or whatever? But I also have at least 5 handymen that I've used in the last couple of years that are aware that I'm traveling, that are ready to take the call. That's where the peace of mind comes from, is that network that you put in place. Go through these and get to the questions. Howdy. Good to see everybody here. REI Jared, good to see you here. Looking forward to the 1 rental at a time event, which is in less than a month. Oh, no, it's in a month. Exactly. Today's the 14th. It starts on the 15th and 16th of next month. I'm here in Thailand until we fly to Vegas. I'm flying to Vegas on Tuesday. It's weird. I leave here Tuesday at like 10 a.m. and I land in Tuesday at 10 a.m. Traveling that way is always fun because you pick up a day. But then Wednesday and Thursday night, there's midnight Denny's meetups on the Strip, the Denny's on the Strip. We're going to do the Wednesday and Thursday night there. And then we've got the 1 rental at a time event on the weekend. 1 month away. Exactly. Larry.
Hi, Larry.
Good. Howdy. Olienka, I think I got an email from you that I have to check out. I think. Just here. Howdy, Mikey. We got here all from Somaliopolis. It's been a while going through 2 turnovers. Happy New Year. So turnovers suck, that not always because of the money that you spend, but because of the time that you spend. right?
Yeah.
Anything that needs repaired, the inspections, the screening, whatever you're going to change. The rent change is usually nice on a turnover, but the best news and worst news about real estate is it won't always be this way. So when you're dealing with a turnover, remember, it's always not going to take that much work. Evening. So we got cash flow string, looking for questions. Yeah, since you're now in Thailand, what level of hem lane are you using? So the properties that I have on there are at the lowest tier, and it's basically to use the platform to, because I advertised on there when I listed those properties or had the turnovers, or purchased the property and had the turnover, to collect rents. Could dispatch, but my handyman will text me. So in the future, I don't know how that'll go. But it's the goal is, if I have a turnover, that property is instantly on the platform at that level where I could have a leasing agent if I needed to. And that's where the peace of mind comes from. It's not being at that tier all the time on every property. That's not required. It's when you need it, the levels that you need are there.
Yeah, especially if you are like, hey, I'm totally going to be like, Dion, I feel like you're always online and checking things. But if someone's not, or says, hey, I don't have time for it, they can click a button, right? And it's that peace of mind of like, okay, great, someone will take over for me. Take the reins.
Jason is here to leer. I like it. I am interested to see how far the fraud goes. And it's Washington State is trying to make it illegal to look into the fraud.
That's absolutely crazy. Yeah,
Yep,
don't get
is.
it.
Then we have the financial firefighter here from Hawaii. The other island I won't go to. I'm on Koh Samui right now. I was on
cool.
Koh Tao, which is a really small island, best scuba, I think, in for me so far, the world that I like to go to. But Koh Samui is a bit bigger, a little more things you can do here. It actually has roads. That's kind of nice. We have a private villa, completely enclosed off pool. It's crazy what, $100 to $200 a night can get you in Thailand. Old guy REI Frank. The real threat isn't ownership concentration, it's operational efficiency. Large players can survive mediocre properties because systems carry them. Small landlords need better ops, not just better deals. Agreed. Treat your properties like you have 100 and your tenants like you have 1. Put your systems in place on your first property like you had 100. Would you be the person going to find out what a smell is at your property if you had 100 of them? Because that would take a bunch of your time. Maybe if it's your first rental, you like to go look at it and look at your asset and see it, and it's fun. I did that in the beginning. I would go work on things all the time. But if you had to, and you had to take your time to go look at it, would you add units? Would you want more? That's a good point. May sound greedy. Minimum wage hurts seasoned businesses. Minimum wage hurts a lot of businesses and employees, as California is learning with all of the fast food restaurant layoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say that with minimum wage, where it is, especially in California, me being in California, what I notice is people start making the decision to use virtual assistants more so, and have only someone there who like they physically need in person in California because of the minimum wage for a lot of things. And so I think California is going to wake up, especially from what I hear of restaurant operators and owners here, where it's like, great, we're going to have the tech where you take your order on that, unless this is a 5-star restaurant, and just have one server doing way far more tables for us, because otherwise we just can't make the numbers work. And I think that I actually love that point about minimum wage. I think it's really going to hurt the economy, and it's really going to hurt jobs at the lower end. It was interesting. I was thinking about this when we were talking about turnovers, and some people might hear I've got construction going on behind me as well, if you hear any noise. But I was thinking about it. It's like, that's probably the last thing for AI to take, right? Is someone being able to paint your walls well and all of that. And so, those jobs, I think for the small landlord, the costs are going to go up for that because the demand for that versus other things is going to be so high. But actually, I love that point about minimum wage because I think it actually hurts the income inequality gap because then you have people looking for jobs who can't get jobs because there aren't any jobs for them because the jobs are no longer open or they're virtual now, or some sort of system has operationalized it.
Not a lot, but several of the restaurants that we've been to here in Thailand have the robots. That it's
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I don't know, about 3 or 4 feet tall. It just comes out with several trays, puts your stuff on your table. Um, they put a digital face on it, like a pixel face, to
Yeah.
smile, to whatever it's, and so that is replacing very low cost labor. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's
that's
like
what's
this is where they're
crazy about
testing it.
it.
Mhm.
Is it's like lower cost labor. You think they tested in a higher cost area.
Right? Yeah, yeah. No kidding. Frank makes a great point. Uh, is the same amount of work really about the number of doors or about whether the owner has systems in place? I learned that in the beginning. It felt like it took 20 hours a week to manage one tenant because I had no systems. I did everything. I handled every problem. And because of that, we had all the problems. I have a video coming out later this week on the 10 reasons why owning rentals suck. And that's kind of one of them is
Yeah. Um,
when you're the point of contact. Sorry. When you're the point of contact, they don't contact you for emergencies. They contact you for anything.
yeah. It's interesting because you always wonder when something seems hard to do, you have to break it down into, is this a problem with the deal I purchased? Right? Is this a problem with my process? Or is this potentially a problem with the people that I have doing the job, like myself doing self management? And I would say a lot of times when you look into it, it is not the deal itself, it's the process and the people. And their one mentality and emotion, and then what systems and processes they put together. So I really like that point because we see it all the time. If you use something that's free, it's like potentially it's not better. Like there's ones out there where it's like the tenant has to pay their rent, so they have to pay an ACH fee of $2 or something. And it's like, well, then they're going to go to Dion and say, "Hey, can you take this Zelle or Venmo or whatever it is?" And so, yeah, I think I really like that point because I think process and people are fail a lot more than people want to believe, expect, or admit.
And once you have the system in place, I don't think people realize how much things change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got several videos, Andrew, on how I paid nothing in taxes. And it's because of the levered depreciation of your $2 million portfolio. How much debt do you have? And that's where my thing. Right now, I'm under levered. I thought 2025 was going to be the first year I paid taxes, and it came really close. I'm pretty sure 2026 will be, unless I purchase those 2 properties. Now that's an outcome goal. I have the goal of buying 2 properties in 2026. My actual goals are, once I get back from this trip, 30 minutes a day, learning my market for 60 to 90 days, making offers, analyzing deals. Like that's the goals I can control. And so if I find them, that'd be great. I would like to start the new depreciation schedules to go further into the future without paying taxes on rental income. But a big part of it is I don't want to pay off debt. If you pay off the debt, you're going to be making money on your money and only depreciating the money you have invested. That cash flow will turn into tax costs. So don't overlever, right? I don't want to
Yeah.
be too much, but I'm below 50%, way too far below 50% right now. And I want to get closer to 50 to control my taxes.
Yeah, I agree with Dion on that. Also, Andrew, I see you have a beautiful family in your photo there. I don't know exactly what your jobs are, but real estate professional status, if you have a $2 million portfolio, I would 100% look into that. Most of our lawyers and doctors who are using Hemlane have their significant other under real estate professional status, where they are managing their properties on Hemlane. they are then writing off all of that time, cost, their home office, everything associated with managing their property. And the properties are even on our complete package, but they are managing that property. And so I definitely talk to your accountant about real estate professional status if that's an option for you.
There's a difference between filing your taxes when you have a W-2, hiring a CPA when you have rentals, and paying a tax professional to tell you how your taxes could be better. How many people have sat with their tax person, gone over your whole portfolio? And that's what businesses do. Businesses get this thing around October or November. You need to spend this much money or you're going to pay taxes. You need to invest this much money, or this is what you need to change. Or here's how R&D tax write-offs are different than expense write-offs. Angel Ray, you're getting squeezed. That's not good. Denver's getting squeezed. Same with Seattle. Now that we have got the communist coming in saying we're going to take property from everybody and make it belong to the collective.
Yeah.
And lead, pray, hodl, Nick every time somebody hits the like button and Angel gets its wings. So Drew, I like to invest in red counties in blue states. A lot of people like to invest in red states because they're more landlord friendly. But I want the tenant friendly regulations, but the red counties where we don't have people saying we're going to take everyone's property and give it to the collective. But we have rent control, which makes me stupid rich. We have longer evictions, longer permit processes, more restrictive building, which creates scarcity, which means my values go up, my rents go up. It's probably not the best strategy for everybody, but it's the one that works for me. It's a great question. Why would someone sell an inherited cash flowing rental? I'll let you go first, but I have a pretty long answer for this one.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do, well, there's 2 points with it, right? Because it always takes usually the third generation to lose all the money. I think that I was just talking about this actually 2 days ago with someone that someone could very easily say, okay, great, I am going to take something that is a cash flowing rental and an appreciating asset, and I'm going to sell it because I inherited it. I'm going to buy a nice car. I'm going to buy a vacation home that I also don't Airbnb and I'm not there 9 months of the year. And I'm going to go take all these vacations and trips. And suddenly something that was appreciating, like if you have $10 million, which is kind of the number you want to get to, you're making $100,000 minimum off of that a year if you're smart to just live off of, right? And so, sorry, $1 million off of it, if you're smart in how you invest. And so that's what all of us would do. But I think there is a generation where their parents did not educate them well enough, and they inherit a cash flowing rental and they say, well, I want this shiny object. I want a boat. I want this other stuff. And so they sell it in order to get that. And then that's how you see these generations lose money. That's not all of the trust fund kids do that. There's a lot who actually make more money that you see over time. But I think that is one of them. Is I think the biggest thing is just education to them. And then just sheer laziness of not educating themselves of what could they do with this rental property to continue to be getting the cash flow off of it.
Yeah, the educating your heirs is the reason why I don't have a trust and why I don't think most people should. So many people say, I want a trust so I can protect my heirs. And I'm like, yeah, are your heirs running the business? Do you think your trust magically creates a board of directors who's going to know how to manage your property, deal with tenant flips, have reserves, manage the money for the properties? No. So a trust can be great if your heirs are in the business and they're ready to assume the role when your role goes away. But the first reason why people will sell an inherited cash flowing rental is because they're people. Both Chesla and I, so I have 3 kids, just 5 kids, one of her daughters and one of my daughters, between the age of 20 and 25, were tattoo ACAB on their legs. All cops are bastards. Literally indoctrinated into the left-wing ideology of college and high school that owning more than one house is considered economic violence. So they've been indoctrinated into that's evil, to the point where between 20 and 25, both her daughter and my daughter were like, I don't want your money when you die because you're making your money through extorting tenants. At the age of 25, something changed in their brain chemistry, and they realized, wow, working sucks. It would be nice to have assets that made money. And now they're both on the side of how do the rentals work? But it took some years to get them around to that side, to the point where they would say, one of them even said, at no point in my life would I ever consider it fair to have more than $30,000 in the bank, because that means I have money other people don't. Like, that's how far weird the brain effing happens in school. Sorry, that language, but that's what happened with our kids. Then you have the people who do inherit but don't get educated on how it works, or do get educated and they realize, I don't want to be in this area. I don't want to manage at a distance. I don't want to pay a property manager. And right now, at the point of inheritance, I can utilize the stepped up basis or the inheritance tax exemption or whatever, to where depreciation recapture and capital gains have been reset to zero right now. If I sell it, this is the best tax. The CPA is telling me right now is the best time for you to sell ever, because it's going to make them work and attorneys work, and you get rid of an asset you don't know how to manage. So logically, for some people, it is the right time to get rid of it, is right at inheritance. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons. Other times it might be that they think they know what they're doing when they don't. Renee Riley, always with interesting conversations, which I haven't read yet. I'll read it out loud first. Real estate is part of this calculation, but think about the small business owner, particularly the seasonal business owner. They are closed out of business because they can't afford the help. Absolutely. That's where the minimum wage thing happens too, to hit as the small business owner. And the real estate. Somebody is suffering through snowboarding in Colorado. There's no snowboarding on this island in Thailand right now. Just started using Hemlane this past month and trying to manage one of my three myself. How does the pre-qual section work? Does it take the person's word? Because they must be lying.
That's a great one, Ian. So first of all, reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd love to hear from you, Dana@hemlane.com. But as far as pre-qualifications, so that's in order to schedule the showing. I don't know if you're using our self-guided tours on that or anything like that. But no matter what, if you're using self-guided tours, local agent, or doing the showings yourself, we'll ask them questions to just say, do you meet the minimum criteria? It's going to be objective by your state. So like, if you're in California, we can't use credit if they are Section 8 now. So there's kind of some crazy laws out there where we are very careful with it. But we're basically asking, does their credit, in most places, does their credit meet a certain threshold? Is their income over X amount? And we calculate it for them by weeks, like hourly, weekly, and monthly and annual, just so they don't have to calculate that out. And then have you had any evictions? And then how many pets do you have? In that particular first case, we take the person's word. So pre-qualification, we do that. And part of the reason is a lot of tenants don't want to do work. They don't want to do an application before they apply unless it's in a high demand area. And they also don't want to pay for a background credit check and income verification. So that's just for the showing. But rest assured, after the showing, they're still going to have to do the application and the background and credit check with the income verification attached to that. And that's where you're really going to be able to weed them out really, really quickly. So if they're lying to you on it, just send them the application, get the background and credit check over to them as well as quickly as possible. And you'll be able to suss that out pretty quickly.
I do this one thing with verification when it comes to work. Now, I'm a weird landlord where I don't care what they make. I'm trying to catch people in a lie, because if you can catch them in a lie early enough, that's a disqualifier for me. So what I want is, where do they work, or where do they say they work? But I don't use the contact number or information that they provide, because it's very easy. We've all seen it. We've all been asked to do it usually, to say, hey, can you pretend to be my boss when you get a phone call in the next couple of weeks? So I'll find out the name of the company, find the company online, contact HR, ask the questions to verify that they work there. not because I care about what they make, but because I'm trying to catch somebody in that company doesn't exist situation before they move in. Because they must be lying is kind of a good position to start from, right? The Reagan version is trust but verify. Mine is, if somebody can get away with something, they're going to try to. So let me see if this is that person or not. Curtis, I have a question. I have tenants text me directly, but should I start having them do it on Hemlane in case I have to go hands off?
I would totally get rid of the text. I would always do it in Hemlane. It can send a text and email to you, but your tenants will actually have an app. So they will have an app with notifications and they can just message directly from there. So there is an app for tenants where they can do all their messaging there, everything from repairs to just standard messages. But I would have everything in there in part because you want just one system of record. Text messages also sometimes don't hold up in court as well as emails. And if it's in Hemlane, it's considered both an email and a text. And then also, if there is an email portion of it, we have read receipts and stuff like that on it as well. So I try not to give tenants any like personal information. Like my tenants don't have my phone number at all. Everything has to go through the system. And that's just like in my case, I do the repair coordination. So if it's an emergency, then they can call them. But I think it's to your point, in case you go hands off, just having one system of record and not having it on your phone number.
Curtis, I think you're in kind of the weird, similar situation to the one I'm in, where you have tenants that you had before you had Hemlane, and switching them over is important, but they already have your phone number. So it's not worth the argumentative confrontation of, hey, stop using my phone, go this way now. You can casually mention it, but every tenant in the future, like the 4 that I've got on Hemlane now, they don't get my number. They get the Hemlane platform. They get that information on there. So going forward, as you add units or have tenant turnover, that's how you introduce that person to the way you deal with your properties, if that makes sense. Orange Truck. If house hacking wasn't an option and you had $350,000 seed money, would you use it to purchase your personal residence debt-free or start your rental journey? I'll let you go first.
I think it depends. I think it depends on it's very personal to who you are and where you are. So if you're in a state where purchase to rent ratios, it actually makes sense to rent versus buy, you may consider that. Other options are like, hey, this is a really good opportunity for me to buy a place. Maybe you're just starting a family or something. You're like, I don't want to have to up and move in case the landlord sells the place. So let me get my personal residence first and then do rentals. Either way, I would still leverage it no matter what. Because if you look at the interest rates where they are versus return on putting the money elsewhere, it's a good deal. So like I'd obviously still take out some sort of loan with it, but I still think it becomes very personal. For me, if you ask my husband, he would have never purchased a primary residence. He would have just purchased rental properties. And he told me that, I don't want a home at all like that we live in. I just want to rent here in San Francisco. We've got rent control. Let's just live in the rental forever. And let's go ahead and purchase and start our rental journey sooner. I actually, even being in the industry, was totally different. Mentally, I just wanted to say I physically own the home I live in and then go start my rental. And that was more of a mindset thing to get by, not a financial decision. It was totally personal. And so, maybe if I were smarter and just went by the numbers and not emotion, I would have started the rental journey first and not the personal residence. But I think I was much more emotional in that sense from where I'm living and every day where I am than my husband or maybe even Dion to some extent there. So yeah, I would just say you could probably with 350,000 do both. And then another option might just be house hacking, where you say, and not house hacking where it's all in the same property, but you could buy a fourplex and live in one of the units and then go ahead and rent out the other 3. So I think there's a lot of different options. But again, I think it's highly, at least from my experience, highly personal about what decision you make.
I'm going to make a standalone video answering that question. That's a great question. My answer is a little bit jaded, and I'll try to be impartial, but it won't be. So I'm financially free, traveling the world, doing whatever I want because I don't own a house. Specifically, that's why. I don't own a forever house. I don't want to. Buying 2 properties this year. One of them is either going to be a place where I live on the water, like where I'm at now, but closer to my kids and properties, or it's going to be acreage where I go back to horses and stuff. So I haven't decided yet. It's going to be an outcome goal. If I want to buy a property, I can control my actions, but not the outcome. That house will be either a small multifamily or a house with an ADU. So when somebody says, if house hacking wasn't an option, there would have to be such an extreme, like I'm iron lung, can't move, stuck in my house, couldn't do house hacking. Because you can buy a house with an ADU like our friend Alex, the accidental investor. Lives in Bremerton, Washington. He bought a 5 or 6 bedroom house, really nice, big. And the house next door is on the same property. So he has neighbors, but he gets to screen the tenants. It looks no different than living in any other house. Millions of families live in apartments. What makes your family so much better than all of the other humans that live in apartments or houses with ADUs? They don't even have shared walls. It's separate driving, fence between. It's 2 different properties, but on the county plot line, they're connected. So I would find a way to house hack. I'm with your husband, Dana, on I wouldn't buy my own house. The last thing I want is a paid off house. The house that you live in is the only debt you're going to get the lowest down payment and best interest rate in your entire life for 30 years fixed rate debt. I want that maxed out. I'm using my VA loan finally this year. I'm going to buy a 4-plex, 100% levered. I don't plan on putting any money in it. I don't want it paid off. Paid off means you only get appreciation on what you invest in it. You only get to depreciate what you invest in it. Like there's all these negatives to having a paid off property. Buying your house all paid off means you don't have a bank in first position and you can probably lose it in a lawsuit, especially if it's the one where you live because you're not displacing a tenant. It's the one the court's going to go after. Like there's a long list of reasons why that's not the way that I would go. Doesn't mean it's wrong, right? Maybe it's your spouse and they just want their forever home and a happy spouse.
Yeah.
And all that's important, right? But can they own a house where you also own the house next to it? Or the version of house hacking that I was planning in the beginning because I had young kids and hadn't done research yet. You buy a house, you live in it for a year or 2, and then you move into another house and you rent out that one. That's house hacking. It's using owner occupied, conventional loan, low down payment, best interest rate to buy a house that you then turn into a rental. Now that doesn't work in Washington State. Single family houses don't cash flow. So I didn't go that route. I went with small multifamily. But I don't ever want to own a house. It's the dumbest, worst asset that somebody can buy in their life. It's the biggest liability you will own in your entire life. So if you can monetize that somehow, you make retirement a decade or 2 closer. Now, that doesn't mean if your portfolio gets big enough, you can then go in retirement and go, yeah, money stacks up. I'm saving somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 a month without trying. I'm trying to not because I'm trying to spend money, I'm not in the cheap hotel. I'm in the private villa with the private pool in the back. And, I'm doing everything we can on these trips. And now we've got Mallorca planned for October and we're going to, every trip is planned to enjoy the money. But I'll still have about $200,000 from this year that I have to deploy. Eventually, I could go, I want to buy a house. I will feel stupid when I have a house that doesn't make me money and it just costs me money. So while you want a happy spouse, you also want to be happy yourself. And the last thing I want to do is feel stupid from owning a house that you don't get to depreciate because it's owner occupied. That when you sell, I don't know, like the level of extreme that has to happen for me not to house hack, seeing how much impact it had on my life, can't get me there. So I tried to be impartial. The list of reasons not to was too big.
Yeah.
It could be the right call for you, but you're adding at least 10 years to how long you have to work.
Yeah, totally. And Dion, I couldn't agree more. It was very, I tell people it was an emotional decision to purchase a property in San Francisco. It had nothing to do with looking at the numbers and what made sense. And as my husband said, happy wife, happy life. So he eventually sided with me on it, even though he didn't agree with me.
Next time that comes up, throw back happy spouse, happy house.
There you go.
There is a course call tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific. So if you're in the course, I will see you there. I put that in the chat just to remind me to mention it. There will be a members only call this weekend. Jason thinks I'm getting good at this StreamYard. At least I went live this time. Not like last time where we did a members only for an hour and it was never live. Matthew, currently working on a unit in a fourplex in a not so good neighborhood. Should I have charged extra for having to keep a pistol on me while working? I don't know if I would charge extra. I don't go anywhere except other countries without a firearm. Like, this is the only time. And now I'll say this to the veterans or the military people. I have done presentations on bases in the US, and the only place I've ever been without a firearm is other countries. So do the math on that, on how many federal laws I was breaking. Yes, I wouldn't charge more. One of my criteria for where I buy is, do I feel safe going there? Because it's not just you have to send handymen there. And the least safe that it is, the more turnover you could have. So it impacts your numbers. And know your market, know where to avoid.
I was actually going to say, from all of the numbers that we see in Hemline and what we pull, every single investor who buys these properties, literally, we just had one the other day that was like, but it only costs $10,000 to purchase the property and the land. That is going to so quickly, the numbers are not going to make sense once you actually, even if it's fixed up, let's say they put $50,000 into it. You look at the neighborhood, and I'm talking about having to take out the HVAC for us to do showings. Like, we've had to do that in certain areas because otherwise things are going to get stolen. Literally, we board up the windows in some of these neighborhoods just to do the showings. And who bears that cost? Not Hemlane. We have to charge, the handyman has to charge the owner to board up the windows just to do the showings. Then we unboard them once we have the tenant signed in, but usually they try to break in through back windows. Whether it's an agent-led showing or a self-guided tour, it's the same exact thing. We've had the same on both. But a lot of in a lot of these neighborhoods, it is really freaking hard to cash flow. And so, my mindset has changed a lot of, like, you do all the numbers on Excel, but you got to change those numbers quite significantly based on what the neighborhood is. And it's really easy to figure out who owns the property 3 doors down and how long have they owned it for, and have a conversation about how they get it to work and can they get it to work. Because the other thing you have to keep in mind is your time is so valuable. And if you're having to go out every single day to make sure that the copper pipes weren't stolen, that time is, your time's worth probably $100 an hour plus. And so you're thinking about all of that as well. So just something to keep in mind.
So you, Matthew, you own your property, you know your market, but for anybody who's watching that is trying to figure out what market to buy in or what area to buy in, there's 2 things that I do. Well, 3 things. The first thing is I don't use CrimeSpot or any of the websites that track crime, because I worked in law enforcement for 8 years and I know that crime is directly related to what your management wants. If the mayor wants to be reelected, crime looks like it's trending down because your felonies are prosecuted as misdemeanors or warnings are issued. If your chief wants more equipment, crime looks like it's on the way up. So everything you can process goes to the prosecuting attorney and gets pushed through. So that data is not good. What I do is call the non-emergency police number. So Google non-emergency, don't call 911. Ask to talk to an officer, they'll call you back. And they usually don't mind because this conversation doesn't create a report for them. And you just say, I'm looking at being an owner and buying on this street. Is that a safe neighborhood? Can you guys go there by yourself? Do you serve a lot of warrants in that area? Because you don't want to be a property manager because cops don't like landlords, because all of your problems as an officer come from tenants because they have not as much to lose as a property owner. So you can get a pretty good indicator that way from an officer. Sometimes you have a department where they won't talk to you, but the ones I worked at had no problem with it. Then the other thing is to call property managers, and now you want to be a landlord who represents possible future business, and say, I'm looking at investing in this area. If I buy on these streets, is that an area you would manage for me? The property managers know where to avoid or where they don't want to manage or where they have trouble with the area. The cops and the property managers will be the ones that know the market well enough. Other investors is also a good resource, but you should be studying your market to the point where you know it. Like, I know to the block where I would own and where I wouldn't in the 2 counties that I'm going to continue to invest in.
Yeah.
Does Hemlane include software to track reps hours for material participation?
We actually don't track the reps hours, in part because there might be things off Hemlane that are done. We can download all the conversations and things like that. But yeah, we've never actually even had anyone from government even come to us to ask for any records, which would be a huge violation of our privacy. And so, no, usually it's just done in another spreadsheet to say, here's how long I spent on the property. It's a great question.
BuzzTune talks about the course calls, which are happening in about an hour. It's every other month. So January, there'll be calls, March, right? Every other month throughout the year. We all jump on Zoom together. We do portfolio deep dives. We learn skills. Anyone who's in the course gets that forever. You don't have to buy it like a what do you call it? A mastermind that you keep paying annually or whatever. It's just once you're in, you can keep coming. And those will go on as long as we feel like. Curtis, if you bought out of the state, would you use Hemlane complete package or traditional PM? I would never use a PM. I know the less a man makes declarative statements, the less apt he is to look foolish in retrospect. So you're not supposed to say never, but I would never use a PM. I don't want somebody else making more money on my properties than I do. I would use Hemlane. My goal would be to, me personally, I invested in Washington State and now I can travel. So I have all of the systems and network in place. If I was all of a sudden, which this could happen, let's say the Seattle insanity of joining the warmth of the collective and nobody owns private property anymore. And I feel like Washington is going to take all of the properties from people and I'm going to sell them and go to another state. I'm physically going to move to Florida or Texas or one of the states where I feel like I will end up investing in and spend 6 months to a year there learning the market. Even if it was to the point where I had to sell all the properties in Washington, not do a 1031, pay the taxes, pay the depreciation recapture, redeploy the funds, I'm absolutely okay with that. People are really worried about taxes. Depreciation recapture is not the monster you think it is. You can only depreciate the value when you bought it. If you own it long enough, that's a fraction of what it's worth. And capital gains tax, it's not like you pay more taxes than you make. You pay a percentage of what you make. So I'm fine paying taxes or depreciation recapture if I had to redeploy somewhere else. But it would be, even if I had to, because it was coming quick and I knew I had to get out of there quick, it'd be sell everything, let the money sit in a low interest bearing account and just go and 6 months or so to study a market and maybe even 1 or 2 markets where I moved there. That's how much financial freedom means to me to continue to live the way that I am. Here we go. The grumpy contractor. 2 of my burrs are complete. I will finish the listing on Hemlane next week. Can I email the listings to you to take a look at? Yes, I'll put my email in the chat.
And you can also email me if you want. I know Dion's in a different time zone than us and hopefully scuba diving a lot. So it's dana@hemlane.com, which Dion can put on the chat. I don't know how to, I think I figured out how to do it.
There's a section on the right where it says chat. There's a private chat or a chat. There you go.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I got it. Okay. I will put my email in there too.
Nice. Yeah, happy to take a look at that. Congratulations. Getting a burr done feels good. I did my one and only burr in 2023. Contractor said 3 months, 10 months. So I was listing. Felt good to get that tenant in there. It's been a great tenant. That's one of the best things about the house hack, back onto the person who doesn't want a house hack, is I can travel the world. There's a tenant living on my property who will tell me if somebody's walking around the property, if there's a leak, if there's an Amazon package sitting on the deck. I mean, anything that happens, there's someone living there. I have an Arlo system. I took one of the exterior cameras, put it on the inside. So like all my stuff is safe and protected. I still get all of the notifications on my phone every time the stupid squirrels run across the window. But I can travel with peace of mind of knowing there's somebody on my property. Ian, thanks. Yes, when I suspect they don't make the money they claim they do or have the credit, then I ask them to apply prior to the showing, and that has weeded them out. So I'll never do a showing one-on-one with somebody who hasn't applied. If somebody applies and they have a reason, this is my work schedule, I really want to see it. Yeah, I'd go out of my way to go and try to be accommodating. But what I do is open house, and I like to go. So everybody who doesn't want to pay the application fee, because I get it, you might not get accepted. Why pay the fee? That wants to see the place, I'll be there Thursday from 5 to 7 or Saturday from 2 to 4. You're welcome to stop by, but there's going to be multiple people checking the property out. Most investors tell me, oh, that's because you're creating scarcity. You want them to think there's competition, and that's not why I do it. The reason I do it is I have small multifamily properties. I want to see how these applicants interact with other people, because they can all be nice to me. They can all be yes sir, no sir, best foot forward. But how are they going to interact with other people who don't determine if they can live there or not? Are they rude, dismissive? Do they wait their turn? Are they polite? because my other tenants have to live next to whoever I select. So part of my screening criteria is hopefully getting them into a group setting and seeing how people interact with each other.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with Dion on that. That like, if you aren't doing showing 7 days of the week in self-guided tours where someone's on the phone with them, they've done identity verification before they go in, they're single access, and you're actually doing in-person showings, it is so expensive, and tenants do not show up. They don't respect your time. So doing an open house showing is definitely the way to go. And just having, hey, I'll be there on Saturday between these times. Come on over.
My track record is probably around 30%. If I have 15 people commit to coming who have actually filled out applications, usually 5 or 6 will show up. So it's even then you'd be wasting your time if you went to meet people who didn't fill out applications. Harmakur Hazard. Don't know how to thank you for what you do. I figured I'd like a comment. Comment is very much appreciated. I'll have to do for now. By the way, I'm almost done with chapter 4 of your audiobook. Really good so far. Thank you. I appreciate that. Is it out on audio now? Have you written a book, Dana?
No, I haven't written a book yet.
Is it in your future?
Yes, after my story's complete. In other words, there has to be I write down all of the. I think you learn so much more from failure than success. And so I've had so many times where I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And you learn so much from it. So I write down all of that. But I also think that there has to be the ending to it. And I'm not to that ending yet on anything personal, professional. There has to be something that is at the end. And right now I still feel like I'm very much in that building mode, if that makes sense.
No, it really does. Our friend Millennial Mike recently said, so for a long time, his channel really blew up in the beginning because he was exposing gurus. He was like, here's why this guy's probably not real. Here's why, and he got a lot of views.
Yeah.
But we've often talked about he should have a course, he should have a book. He's the out-of-state investor, the king of Gary, Indiana. And he said, for the lumberjack landlord or Zuber or me, a course makes sense because we went the whole journey.
Yeah.
We reached financial freedom. We got here. We saw all the trials. We can say, there's a million ways to do it. Here's what worked for me. He says he's like mid-journey, but he's like at 80%. I think he's a year or two away from being able to retire. So that happens later for him. For me, here's the power of the book and why you might start writing it. And so, and I might overshare in this too. How would you explain to somebody, here's how I get the best interest rates? Or how would you explain to somebody, here's how the Burr method works? Or here's how I don't do the Burr method? If it's in your head and you're just thinking it, it can change or it can shift, or you're always thinking, how would you improve that? Or how would you make that better or different, right? So my goal was, if I take it from my head and I put it into writing, which then became Audible later, but I put it into writing, that's the chapter. That's me looking at the chapter, every page, every word, going, okay, what would I change? How can I improve that? Set and structure to convey it, the order of operations, all of that. Okay, now once that's done, I was like, oh, I can stop thinking about how to get the best interest rates, because my system from my head is perfected. Not that it's perfect, but it's perfected the way I would do it. Or it's not dismissed from my brain. Every aspect of how do I screen tenants? How do I show my properties? All of that becomes to where now I can just throw out, and this is exactly how I put it in the book. It's a solid, I don't have to think of it anymore. Here's the overshare. I have a fantasy novel I would love to write, right? I'm not an author. It'll probably never be published. I'll probably write it and then probably delete it when I'm old. But the fantasy of the novel changes as I'm thinking about it. So if I can take it and put it into writing, into the script of page, and look at every sentence and every interaction, every character development, and every origin story, conversion story, and all the things that go into writing a novel, I could stop thinking about it. That's going to be a superpower. So that's how I look at the book, Financial Freedom for the Lazy Person, is each section is a part of the aspect of investing in real estate, how I did it, what worked, what the failures were. And once it's in writing, that's it. Now, if somebody asks, I can literally go find this section in the book. This is how I handle that.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And there's probably also ways that AI can help with that. for people writing a book of like, you can just in chat, you know how you have projects? You could have a project called your book, and you could talk about it and say like, this is my emotion at this time. This is what is going through my head, and do it so you don't have to type it all out if you don't have time. So that is a really good point to like start it now, because in the future you won't have that whole journey as well thought out in your head and exactly what you were dealing with at that time.
I did the chat GPT version of here's the outline, save this for me, like a chronology kind of thing. So yeah. How will no property taxes affect small landlords?
You want me to answer that one? I can answer
I'll let
it.
you start. Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, I think that when you think of the cost of a house, property taxes is just one variable, right? Like you have your interest rate, you have your home value, and you have property taxes. So if there's no tax on the property, it makes it more affordable to purchase. So most likely the value of the property goes up. So who wins? Those who already own properties. Who loses? Potentially those who don't own properties, or maybe it's just a net where it's like the property value went up, but now they don't have to pay the taxes. And so that's how I think about it. Is like it depends on if you own the properties or not. The second thing I would say with it is the second thing I would say with the taxes is that the government loves to spend money, and a lot of times it goes to waste, as we all know, and a lot of times it goes to a lot of waste. And so when they don't have property taxes, they're going to tax it somewhere else. And so they're going to either tax it on your income, which I'm not a huge fan of. I don't think you should tax people to work. I think you should incentivize people to work. You can tax it on goods of consumption, right? And so I think kind of two things happen: is the price of goods probably, or the your income, take home income goes down because there's that. And then obviously the value of the property goes up. But I'd love Dion to answer as well.
So I think it's a couple of tiers to the question. The first implementation of no property tax is probably going to go to owner-occupied properties. I don't think they're going to come out and go, if you have a rental, you don't have to pay taxes on it anymore. So the first phase will probably, if it starts to be implemented, where you live is not taxed. How important does house hacking become then? Then, if it does hit the properties, Dana, you nailed it 100%. Investors buy based on yield, homeowners buy based on payment. And if you remove one of the expenses, you increase the profit, which would increase the demand, which could cause prices to go up. People can buy more based on the same payment. People who own get richer. People who go to buy would take time to get richer. So following the legislation is important to see what's going to happen with market trends. The person who almost in like 90+% of the scenarios that wins is the asset owner, the person who already owns. So that takes me to the frustration that comes from the success of the Crash Pro videos. The video that says, here's the reason why you should wait. Here's the reason why you should not take action. Anybody who waits or doesn't take action is losing. Anybody who rushes to buy a bad deal or buy before they're educated or buys before they don't understand their asset class is going to lose too. So anybody saying rush and do it or wait and do it should be blocked. It is buy when you're ready, buy when you found a great deal. And there's a lot of elements that go into those two answers. But the no property taxes could create what I call windows of opportunity. So from 2022 until right about now, we are in a window of opportunity that is going away. And I bought 2 properties to benefit from this. So after 2020, remote work became more of an option than at any point in our lives. So people pushed out farther from the work hubs that would increase rents, but not property prices because they don't want to buy. They might get called back to the office. So rents almost doubled in the area where I bought my last 2 properties in the last 3 years. Not because rents market-wide went up 100%, but because those markets were pushed up by remote workers. So I bought 2 properties that didn't make a lot of sense. Another investor said, I saw those, I would never touch those. And then I own them and I see what the rents are, which were $1,200 and I'm getting $2,100. And they're like, wow, that's the best deal I've ever seen because we had a window of opportunity. But now that's closing because Remote workers are starting to feel confident that they're either already back in the office or their position is probably never going to be called back to the office. The new business model works, so they're starting to buy. So the rents are still pushed up, but now prices are starting to push up too. So we have these windows of opportunity to watch. If prices drop, or if rates drop, there is a couple of day window of opportunity as the family goes by where you can buy before prices go up. Like literally a couple of days. As soon as the market finds out rates came down on mortgages, not on the Fed, but on mortgages, prices shoot up. So people have to watch for those windows of opportunity, and taxes can be one of those. Looking for a $100,000 line of credit and have the equity across 10 rentals at 65% loan to value, but lenders don't want to be in second position. Any advice? Any advice, Dana? They have 60% loan to value on 10 rentals. And they're looking for a $100,000 line of credit.
Yeah. They don't want to be second in position. Well, and what kind of lenders are they looking at in this case? This traditional lending?
That's a good question. I'd have to see if there was anything more to it. We're
Because I'm
almost
just
done with the questions here, but
because usually what you see in that particular case is if they're going to be a second position there, they're not going to change. I'm trying to think of some sort of way to negotiate a term there where they would be okay being second in position. But otherwise, I would say that you have to find some other type of lender, hard money, whatever it is that is okay with it. So some like non-traditional line of credit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'll take a contrarian view.
Okay.
And my first answer is going to be Nilsson Frederick. Matt, the lumberjack landlord, would probably have a better answer, and he will be live Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific. He goes every Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific. Like me, he goes basically till the questions are done. But, sorry, lost my comments there for a second. So please come and ask him that question. He might have a more detailed answer. My answer isn't the one you're going to want. I wouldn't do a $100,000 line of credit on 10 properties with 60% LTV. My goal would be to stay around 70%, and at 65%, I wouldn't be adding debt. I've never done a HELOC, never done a cash out refinance. I have yet to sell for a 1031 exchange. I'm not a fan of touching capital. I don't want to recycle capital. I want to recycle capital, cash flow. So the goal is, how are your properties cash flowing? What are you doing for your job? And how much time would it take you to just have the $100,000? That's why for me, there were years between purchases, 2 years to get the first one, 2 years to get the second one, year and a half. It sped up a little bit towards the end, but it was never by looking at adding debt, because here's the problem with adding debt. And I think it's going to answer the question. Did it come up later? I thought I saw another question. Oh, yeah, the next question. Hello, you mentioned in your book you'd never pay off your mortgages, especially the one you're living in. I'm done paying off my mortgage in 3 years. Would you consider refinancing it for negative $3,000 expenses? Here's why I wouldn't consider adding the debt. And here's why I wouldn't consider the $100,000 line of credit. Maybe a line of credit as a HELOC somewhere, just as a backup. People talk about that. I've never done that either. Because adding debt to an existing asset doesn't give you more levered appreciation, doesn't give you more levered depreciation. That's how people end up with a $2 million portfolio where they're still paying taxes. Adding debt doesn't give you more appreciation, doesn't give you more depreciation. It just gives you money. And money is the last thing you want. Some people are so broke, all they have is money. And I don't want to be in that position. I want to have assets that benefit from inflation. So, Nilsson, it's let time create the money for you. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it won't happen as fast. But slow is steady, or slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? To take it from the range.
Good answer.
The lumberjack landlord might have a better one, though. He's way smarter when it comes to that kind of stuff. And he has a bigger portfolio. That was his goal. Mine wasn't a big portfolio. My goal was the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. And great content. Always looking forward to your conversations with Dana. Me too. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time every time you can come on here, Dana. And then somebody just bought the audiobook. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy it. I honestly don't know what's harder, writing a book or getting Audible to accept your recordings. Shane, does Hemlane have a way to track first come, first serve for applications avoiding application fee refunds?
Yes, we do. So we actually don't charge the application fee until you mention, like, hey, I do want to run the second part of the application. So the application is free for them to go through. Other platforms won't do that. They want to make money off of all the application fees, so they shoot it off to everyone, and then you're having to refund. We do it where we control it, where you actually say, now I want to charge, and complete the application. And so that just helps because you have your first step, which is the application, upload of bank statements, pay stubs, all of that. And then it's not until you click the button for the background and credit check and income verification that the tenant would be charged to go through it. Once the tenant does go through it and is qualified, you can stop all the other applicants from going through theirs, so that two aren't charged at the same time. So we have all of that built into it.
The 50% debt on the $2 million portfolio, still pay taxes on the 60K. The suggestion I would have is take your tax returns, it's probably going to cost you a few $100, to a real estate professional CPA and see if something's been missed, or if there's something you can optimize, or something you can use strategy for next year to change that. Because there is a lot of ways that tax pros can do things differently. There's advice from FreedomWorks. The gentleman wants $100,000 line of credit based on his real estate. The answer is to get that $100,000 based on your signature, detached from real estate. That is way more work than you need. And then the last question that we'll wrap up with is, missed the first hour and a half. Will this video be posted in the paid community? This isn't the free community, the Accidental Landlord. It is alive. So once it's done, you can just go back and watch it from the beginning. And the intro is, so every Tuesday when I do these live streams, there's an intro for 10 to 20 minutes. It's what I shoot for. Sometimes it goes over, of a topic, giving people time to get questions into the comments, which we really appreciate, because I got to learn things from Dana this week, like I do every time that you're on.
And likewise.
I hope everybody has a week full of amazing, I think nope, I can't, because I don't know what she's doing. I was going to do a walkthrough for the villa here to show you what $100 a night gets you in Thailand. But
actually, I do want to say, so maybe next video, tell us when.
The other side gets you, that's the private wall that's all the way around the villa that you're in. And then, no, I won't do it because I don't know where she is. But you get a private pool with that barrier around. So this is a country that's worth coming to.
This is why Dion does not buy real estate in San Francisco and Seattle. Or buy primary residences, I should say.
No, and even my next primary residence that I'm buying, because I'm selling my one that I'm house hacking right now, is going to be a small multifamily or house with ADU. That'll always be a thing. So, ciao, everybody.
See everyone in Vegas.